Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. We're going to continue on today with my first big project of 2024, reviewing all of the Group 1 cars in GT7 and then eventually ranking them from worst to best. Now, I honestly think I have one of the contenders for perhaps one of the worst Group 1 cars in the entirety of GT7, and it's not even down to the likes of pace and such. It is a very quick car, but I just find myself absolutely disliking my time spent with this thing. This is the Hyundai VGT 2025 Group 1. Now, when we first look over the stats itself, it really doesn't give away that it's bad at performance, and it's not at all. As you can see, 882.85 pp, four-wheel drive, 640 brake horsepower, weighing 972 kilograms, and it's naturally aspirated. On paper, it ticks all of the boxes for being a very successful Group 1 car, and in terms of the design, it really has zero changes between the original version, which I'm about to bring up now. This is a Hyundai N 2025 VGT. This is the standard version, not group spec. As you can see, 939.72 pp, four-wheel drive, 870 brake horsepower, 972 kilograms once again. This time though, it is EV powered. So just bear that in mind as I talk about the Group 1 version throughout the review, because I am going to make reference to it. So as mentioned, when it comes to the Group 1 version, which is obviously what we're going to review today, it's basically a copy-paste job and then group spec. There's almost zero changes between it other than going from EV to obviously combustion powered. Naturally aspirated this time around, so there's no such thing as hybrid or turbo or anything like that. It's just straight out of the box a very powerful car. And overall, in terms of the performance itself, it's just not bad at all. In fact, it's relatively strong at almost any track. However, there is a few glaring issues, and there's something about this car that I just genuinely do not like. So at the beginning of the video, I made reference to the fact that the original version is EV powered, and well, there's a complete change in terms of how it's putting that power down. This one obviously has much more than an EV. Combustion powered, naturally aspirated. However, they may as well have just not bothered. Just have a listen to this for me. Yeah, you may have noticed this is perhaps the worst sounding car I've ever heard in GT7. It sounds absolutely awful. And not only that, the sound just sounds very off and unintentional. From a distance, it really does kind of carry over that EV sound where it makes literally no noise but the wind. But when it does come past and you can actually hear the engine, it's just absolutely awful. It's a very distracting kind of screeching sound, and it's made even worse when you're up close trying to drive this thing around. It's perhaps the worst thing I've heard since the Gran Turismo 5 and Gran Turismo 6 engine sounds back in 2010 and 2013. Yeah, not great, to be totally honest. So my original gripe with this car was all about the sound design itself. However, next up I'm going to have to touch on the styling. So if you don't like the design of the original VGT, then you're not going to like the Group 1 either. It literally features zero changes across the board, at least none that I could pinpoint out anyway, and if there is any, they're that minor. So basically, if you don't like the original, you ain't going to like the Group 1. Although this car has the sort of tagline of 2025, which is only next year, it feels so far away from reality, and I don't quite understand it either. When we look at the real life Hyundai EV projects that have been kind of coming out, especially over the last couple of years or so, they're making some very good looking machines and proving that, well, EV cars don't necessarily have to be ugly boxers. So in that sense, they're absolutely nailing the real world projects, but when it comes to their VGT, it feels so completely away from reality that I could just never ever kind of sit and settle with this car. It looks to the point where I feel like I'm playing more Wipeout than I am Gran Turismo, and it's just something I'm not a fan of. VGT cars in general, I am really not a fan of. However, I do much prefer them if they seem like they are something that could become a real thing, and I just cannot see it with the Hyundai here. When it comes to the styling, styling. Again, if I don't like the original, I'm not really going to like the Group 1 since there's almost none to minimal changes. And in terms of the overall design point, it just feels like a bit of a wonky spider in terms of the way it looks. It looks absolutely bizarre. Now, in terms of this being a race-going version of a VGT, I just don't see it. Where something like the McLaren VGT or the Tomahawk VGT even look like they could quite comfortably sit in a modern day hypercar class at the peak of sports car racing, that Hyundai just feels way too blown out of reality and just way too over the top. I will give credit though when it comes to the interior, it is pretty cool. The little bar that fills up in front of you and such does look genuinely nice, and there is some nice details. I really do dig the kind of livery style and the fact that you can actually tell it's a proper Hyundai, given the fact that it's got all their branding and the M branding all over it. So in terms of those design aspects, I do like it, but the overall design I'm just really not a fan of. Maybe it's just me. Let me know what you think of the styling down below. So before we finish the review, I do want to touch on the performance itself, because it might sound like I've absolutely just slated this car, and maybe I just have a personal beef with this thing, I don't know. But to be totally honest, in terms of the performance, it's certainly not bad at all. It will perform very, very well over that one lap pace. In fact, surprisingly so. It looks quick in terms of its out-of-the-world design, and it really does go quick as well. It certainly isn't no slacker, and I really, really do enjoy that about it. However, its speed isn't everything, to be totally honest. It feels almost outclassed in every single way, whether that actually be its speed and its overall one lap performance or the likes of tyre wear and fuel economy. It basically gets absolutely slapped by almost anything else in its class. It sits in this place of being fast but still not exceeding in anything. So again, couple that with a pretty poor design, a pretty awful sound which will probably blast your eardrums out and completely make you go deaf by the time you're done with this thing, and then couple that with a performance where it's outmatched at every single thing by a different type of VGT Group 1, there's no real reason to head to this car. And that's why I feel like it never really gets spoken about either, because it's almost forgotten. It just feels like it's one of those cars that's in the game and nobody really ever uses it. In fact, I'd be very surprised if anyone actually uses this as kind of a main vehicle. If you do, let me know why. In my opinion, I just feel this car is outclassed in every single category when it comes to measuring its performance, and there's just better options available. So, there we go. This is the overall leaderboard, and as you can see, the performance is strong, but again, it is bested by other vehicles. It comes overall 7th, PP rating 882.85, racing mediums which are typical, and a time of 5:45.296. As you can see, narrowly beating the likes of the Tomahawk and the TSO 50, and only just losing out to the likes of the Dallara Honda 19 and the likes of the Peugeot 908 and the L750R, absolutely decimating this thing in terms of overall performance. So a time that I'm not really surprised by. As I said, the one lap performance is there, but again, as you can see just by looking at this table, it is bested by other cars in class, and it doesn't really exceed or succeed in being best in class at really anything. For me, it's just a very average car, very poor sound design, and just looks that genuinely do not appeal towards me. So in conclusion, is this the worst Group 1 car in the entire game? I would say no. Currently that still goes to the Alpine VGT, only by a little margin. In terms of the styling, it's just really not my cup of tea, and that sound design just really takes me back to 2010 and 2013 with Gran Turismo 5 and Gran Turismo 6 and their vacuum sound designs. It was just absolutely awful. So if you absolutely want to keep your sanity, I just wouldn't recommend running this thing. However, if you are going to defend this car, let me know why down below in detail. Don't just kind of hark on and say, oh, you suck, this car's amazing, you're just bad. No, in all honesty, if you are going to defend it, just let me know why. I'm open to suggestions as to why you absolutely love this thing, but it's certainly not my cup of tea. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.